Deep in the heart of Laos lies one of the most enigmatic and mysterious sites in all of Southeast Asia, the Plain of Jars. Located in a remote region of the country, in Phonsavan in the Kouvang district, the Plain of Jars is home to up to 2,100 megalithic jars spread out over 90 different sites, covering an area of 2,500 square kilometers. Each jar, standing from 1 to 3 meters tall, weighs up to several tons, with the biggest one weighing up to 14 tons. The jars are made of sandstone, granite, and limestone and are believed to be transported from quarries a few miles away. However, despite this vast endeavor, the origins and purposes of these jars remain unknown. There is very little direct historical or archaeological evidence about the culture that created the megalithic jars of the Plain of Jars. This civilization is thought to have been part of a larger network of societies that spanned Southeast Asia, with trade links to other cultures in the region. Similar jar clusters are found all the way to northern India, which supports the theory that it may be part of a trade route where the jars are used to collect rainwater for use during the dry season. Other theories for its purpose include funeral urns, since human remains have been found in and around the jars, and food storage. However, I believe that the human remains were a later addition by the local people and not the initial purpose of the jars. Conventionally, these jars are believed to date between 500 BC to 800 AD. However, using a combination of optically stimulated luminescence dating and archaeological analysis, researchers from the University of Melbourne have suggested in a recent paper published in 2019 that the jars may be much older than previously thought, dating back to as early as 1480 BCE. The University of Melbourne research is significant because it challenges previous assumptions about the age and purpose of the Plain of Jars. The earlier age range may indicate that the jars were used for some kind of ritual or ceremonial activity, rather than as burial sites or for storage as initially thought. The jars are typically open at the top and do not have covers. However, there are a few examples of lids or covers that have been found, although they are relatively rare compared to the number of jars themselves. The covers or lids are typically made of the same type of stone as the jars themselves and are often decorated with intricate patterns and designs. The patterns on the covers can vary, but they typically consist of geometric shapes, such as circles, squares, and triangles, as well as more elaborate designs that may include animal or human figures. But the Plain of Jars is more than just a collection of ancient artifacts. It is also a place steeped in myths and legends. One of the most popular legends involves a giant named Kouvang, who is said to have created the jars in order to brew and store rice wine. Kouvang and his brother, who was also a giant, were responsible for many of the megalithic structures in the area, including the jars and the nearby stone circles. The brothers were said to be benevolent beings who helped the local people with their agricultural and irrigation systems. Another legend tells of a group of giants who lived in the area and used the megalithic jars as cups for drinking at a party after a victory. In this version of the story, the giants were known for their love of rice wine and would often drink so much that they became incapacitated and fell asleep in the fields. A more supernatural version of the legend involves a group of spirits or demons who are said to have created the jars as part of a ritual or ceremony. According to this legend, the jars were used to brew a magical elixir that granted immortality to those who drank it. However, the spirits were eventually defeated by a group of powerful shamans who destroyed the jars and prevented the elixir from being brewed. In December 2017, I took a 7 to 8 hour bus journey from Kouvang to Phonsavan to visit the Plain of Jars. The moment I stepped off the bus, a cheerful man with impeccable English approached me, asking whether I would like to find a hotel to stay in and whether I would be interested in going on a Plain of Jars tour the next day with him. Of course, I said yes to both. Mr. Kouvang, or Vang for short, was a Hmong. The Hmong are a hill tribe race that hails from the Miao ethnicity in China. There is a tragic story about this minority group that has been kept from the public, a secret war with aftereffects that continue to take their toll on human victims even today in the form of unexploded ordnances, UXO. In fact, the UXO is still not cleared from many of the jar sites, so when I was there, we could only visit 3 sites, Jars Site 1, 2, and 3. The most amazing thing I eventually learned about Vang is that, because he wanted to become a tour guide, he never had formal training in English but learned it all on his own. I will talk more about his story later in the video, including ways to get in touch with him under the travel logistics element of this video. But before we do that, let's talk about my personal experience at the Plain of Jars. The nice thing about engaging Vang as a tour guide is that he was not shy in talking about the mystical and paranormal aspects of the jars. His people believe that the jars are located along ley lines, which is consistent with other megalithic structures. He also talked about how the Plain of Jars is associated with mysterious and unexplained phenomena. Some visitors have reported hearing strange noises and seeing apparitions in the area. Others have claimed to have experienced a sense of unease or a feeling of being watched while exploring the region. I am not sure whether it was because of the timing of when I reached the site. I went in the morning, but I didn't really feel anything from this megalithic site. Despite that, it was wonderful to finally see the jars. It is interesting that across the world, all the megalithic sites have been associated with giants, so could this site be indirect evidence that giants used to roam Southeast Asia? Let me know in the comments below what you think. Now, a slight detour from the paranormal aspects to the modern historical facts about the Plain of Jars. From the early 1950s to the mid-1970s, the USA got involved in the Vietnam War to stop the spread of communism. It is believed that the conflict was confined within North and South Vietnam, but what was not told was that the Hmong were recruited by the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, of the USA in 1965 to fight on their behalf. At that point, there were two factions, the Pathet Laos, a communist group allied with North Vietnam, and the Royal Laotian Party, allied with South Vietnam. The USA was allied with South Vietnam. As the Vietnam War became increasingly unpopular back home, the USA found it difficult to send more soldiers to fight the communists. The CIA proposed to arm and train the Hmongs in exchange for economic aid after the war was won. The Hmongs were fierce and loyal allies, and they fought hard. Despite their best efforts, however, it was clear that the Americans and Hmongs were losing the battle. From an initial population of 400,000, the war caused the death of over 300,000 Hmongs. In 1975, the Vietnam War officially ended with the victory of the Communists from North Vietnam. However, that wasn't the end of the war for the Hmongs. After the Americans left, defeated from Laos, the Pathet Lao began searching for and killing the Hmongs, leading to what became known as the Hmong genocide. The Hmongs had to run into the forests and hide from their persecutors. Vang, my tour guide, actually stayed in the forest until he was 6 years old and remembered the days when they lived in fear of death. His father was 7 to 8 years old when he was separated from his own parents, Vang's grandparents, as they were crossing the Mekong River, but he was too young to make it across. Can you imagine the pain of leaving your child behind or the fear that you would never see your parents again? Vang's grandparents eventually made it to the USA and still live there, while Vang's father currently stays in Laos. In Phonsavan, besides seeing the Plain of Jars, you can learn more about this secret war involving the Hmongs in museums like the Mines Advisory Group (MAG) and Quality of Life Association. Finally, though the Plain of Jars may be a bit out of place, especially for non-Asian tourists, if you happen to be in the area and want to check it out, here are the travel logistics to do so. The Plain of Jars is close to Phonsavan. You can fly to Phonsavan from Luang Prabang on one of the national airline's small, propeller-driven passenger planes. Buses run daily from Vientiane, Vang Vieng, and Luang Prabang to Phonsavan. The three main jar sites can be visited by jeep/taxi arranged through one of the guest houses or tour companies or by motorcycles, which are easy to rent in town. You can visit jar sites 1, 2, and 3, with site 1 being the busiest. These three are the only ones open to tourists because they were fully cleared of UXO, unexploded ordnances. To go from sites 2 and 3, it is possible to hike about 1 hour, but this must be with a proper walking guide. As Phonsavan is quite far from the main tourist sites like Luang Prabang, it was tough for my personal guide, Vang, to eke out a living. He has 3 children and is also one of the main caretakers of an extended family of 19. For people who are planning to visit Laos, especially Phonsavan, please get in touch with him. He recommends 2 days in Phonsavan, 1 day to see the Plain of Jars and 1 day for a historical tour. He can also help book tickets, tours, and hotels in Laos. If you have any questions or want to get in touch with Vang, his contacts will be stated in the description box of this video. Thank you for watching and joining me on this journey. Till our next adventure.